All right, let's take a look at matrix multiplication. Multiplication is just a little bit more complicated than addition and subtraction, and there are different rules. So let's take a look. Let's look at this first part. So if you recall, we label these matrices by rows and columns. Okay, so that's a row and that's a column. In order to multiply matrices, the best thing to do is to write these in numbers. Write this out, row by column, row by column. And the thing is, again, so let's just make sure we're clear. So that's a row and that's a column. These two numbers have to be the same. They must be the same. Must be the same. If they're not, it's impossible. So if not, cannot multiply them. Period. I mean, there's no choice. Those two have to be the same. Then the interesting thing, well, of course there's a lot of interesting things, right? These last two numbers, whatever they are, what they do is they give you the size of the answer matrix. That's what they do. So before we even start to try to multiply matrices together, we really should write out the row and column underneath each one and see if it's possible. And then the answer matrix, which is right here, that's what the answer matrix would be. Okay, so let's work on that. Let's try that out. To multiply them, I put a little note down here. You're supposed to multiply corresponding entries in the first row of A with the entries in the column of B. Then you add them together. Okay, so what that means is the first matrix, so it matters which matrix comes first. So the first one, you're just going to use the rows, and the second one, you're only going to use the columns. I mean, that's how it works. Okay, so let's kind of get that kind of ingrained, and that's okay. That's how it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is just write each out as we go. So what we would do, so let's actually make sure we can do this. This is a 2 by 3, right? 2 rows, 3 columns. This is a 3 by 2. So those numbers match, check. So our answer matrix is going to be a 2 by 2. That's what we're going to get. Now I'm going to do this intermediary step, which I encourage you to do when you first start multiplying matrices. Without this intermediary step, it's easy. I mean, you can't go back and check your work. And I know, you guys know, I really like to check my work because, yes, addition and subtraction is hard, right? It's hard. So we're going to start out with this first row and this first column. And what we do is we multiply the corresponding entries, and then we add those things together. So I'll show you what I mean. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2 times the 0, and I'm just going to write it out. So 2 times 0 plus. Then I'm going to take the -1 times the -1. So then -1 times -1 plus. Then I'm going to take the 5 times the 1. 5 times the 1. And once I finish that calculation, it's going to give me, remember we said it was a 2 by 2. Here's my answer right down here. It's going to give me this number, that spot is what it's going to give me. And why not? Let's just go ahead and multiply it out. So 0 plus 1 plus 5, that's going to give me a 6. So that spot has a 6. Okay, hopefully that kind of makes sense. So if I want to get this spot, which row do you think I need to use from the first matrix? Well, I need to use the first row. I need to use this same row, right? Because this spot is on the first row. And then what row do you think, or excuse me, what column do you think I need to use in the second one? Well, not this one, right? I'm going to have to use the second column because first row, second column is this location. That's what corresponds to that location. So let's do that. So I've got the 2 times the 6 plus. Then I've got the -1 times the 4 plus. Then I've got the 5 times the 2, and that is that piece. So what is that? 12 minus 4 plus 10, that's 18. Okay, great. So we're done with the first row. We don't need to use the first row anymore, right? We have all that going on. It's already there. So now let's start on the second row, first column. Where do you think that number is going to go? Second row, first column. Yeah, it goes right here. Okay, so let's do those calculations. So we've got 1 times 0 plus 0 times -1 plus 4 times 1. Okay, do all that arithmetic and we get 4. And the last one, okay, we need to use this bottom row because we're in the bottom row, but now we need to use the second column because we're in the second column. So here we go. Let's do that one. So I've got 1 times 6 plus 0 times 4 plus 4 times 2. Very good. And that gives me a 14. And that's our first multiplication. Yay! All right, great. Okay, so let's move to the second example. Now let me shrink this just a little bit. Don't you love this? This is so great. Okay, so we're going to shrink it a little bit so I don't get too carried away. Okay, so let's look at our second example. This is a 2 by 2 times a 2 by 2. Notice how those are the same, and my answer is going to be a 2 by 2. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to use the first row and the next one's first column. So I have 1 times 4 plus 2 times 0. Let's start our answer matrix. That's going to be 4. Okay, great. So let's stay in the top row and let's move to the second column. So I have a 1 times 1 plus a 2 times -1. And that gives me, what, -1. Okay, so we're done with the first row. Let's go to the second row. And we're going to go back to the first column. So again, we do corresponding. So this one times this one. So -4 times 4 plus, then this one times this one. 3 times 0. And that gives us, what, -16. Okay, let's move this to the last column. And so we have -4 times 1 plus 3 times -1, and that gives us a -7. Okay, fantastic. Now I want you to notice I've got the matrix 1, 2, -4, 3. Look here, I've got the matrix 1, 2, -4, 3, but it comes second. And then I have this matrix 4, 1, 0, -1, 4, 1, 0, -1. Oh, look, I flipped their order. Now let's think about this for a second. we're going to consider this question. Does matrix A times B have to be equal to matrix B times A? Well, it seems like it would be from what we've known from regular things, right? 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2. But I'm not really sure about matrices. Let's check it out. Let's see what happens. Again, this is a 2 by 2. That's a 2 by 2. The middle numbers are the same. And the outside numbers tell me what the answer matrix would be. All right, let's do this. So we've got the first row, first column. So we've got 4 times 1 plus 1 times negative 4. Just for fun, let's go ahead and do that. So, that's 0. Ooh, that doesn't match here, does it? Nope. So we can already answer that question. That is a big no. And it makes sense because on the first matrix you're only using the rows, and the second matrix you're only using the columns, so it would make sense that they wouldn't be exactly the same every time. Let's do this one. So we've got 4 times 2 plus 1 times 3. What is that? 8 and 3 is 11. Let's move to the bottom row. So we've got 0 times 1 plus negative 1 times negative 4. What is that? 4. And then lastly, we have 0 times 2 plus, that's a 0, negative 1 times 3, and that's negative 3. So we can see by inspection, those two are definitely not the same. So we answered the question, yep, nope, doesn't have to be the same. All right, let's look at a few more examples before we stop this lesson. Okay, before we jump in, we need to check to make sure things are possible, right? So I've got a 2 row by 3 column and a 2 row by 3 column. Oh, this one is not possible. We can't multiply those together. You know, that's a pretty good thing to know before we go through and try to do it, right? You really should check to make sure before you try to, jump on in there. All right, let's look for this. Solve for x and y. Now we could, I know it's super fun. I mean, we could have a whole lot of fun and just like multiply like crazy. But we really only care about the x and the y. So let's think about that for a second. Okay, so we know that the first matrix is the rows, the second matrix is the columns. So I really want this column. Does it matter which row I pick? Not really, except, not really, right? It's just going to match up with, so one of these. So let's just for fun, this is a 3 by 3. This is a 3 by 2. The answer is going to be a 3 by 2. See, this is a 3 by 2. So this is the answer. So it's legit. So we know that we need to match up to one of these over here, right? So row and a column. Okay. Just for fun, why don't we use the first row? So if we use the first row and the first column, it needs to match this, right? Because that's the location that's in the first row, first column. Okay, we can do that. So let's multiply that out. So I've got negative 2 times 1 plus 1 times x plus 2 times 3, and that is supposed to equal 6. Okay, cool. So we've got 2 plus x plus 6 equals 6. So we basically have x is 2. Okay, great. See, that's not that bad. It looked kind of scary, but it's not that bad. Now let's focus on the y. So that's on the bottom row. So I'm going to need to use the bottom row. Gonna need to use that. and it's in the second column, so I'm going to have to use the second column. Okay, I really don't have a choice. I need to get to the y. All right, so let's do that. So we've got 0 times 3 plus negative 2 times 2 plus 4 times negative 1, and that is supposed to equal y. Okay, great. So what, negative 4 minus 4 is y, so y is a negative 8. Okay, fantastic. That takes us to our very last problem. They want us to simplify. Whew, okay. So we need to do our multiplication. Now, I hope this doesn't trouble you that much. I'm not going up here. Okay, it went a little crazy on me. Up here, notice how I did this step right here where I wrote everything out. On this next one, I'm not going to do that step. I hope that doesn't trouble you too much. If you would like to go back and work through that step, I would encourage you to do that if that's helpful. What I'm going to do is just kind of do this as I go, where I'm going to talk it through. So basically, I've got 6 times 2 is 12 plus negative 4 times 3 is 12. 12 plus a negative 12 is 0. Okay, so let's do this one. So 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. Negative 18 plus a negative 4 would be a negative 22. Okay, let's work on the bottom. 0 times 2 is 0 plus negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And 0 times negative 3 is 0 plus a negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. So you can see if you don't write that middle step, you could get really messed up. It could be very confusing. So you certainly do not have to go skip that middle step and do it in your head. When you first start multiplying, it would probably be a better idea to just go ahead and write that step out so you can go back and double check your work. Okay, so hopefully we have the gist of things now. So we've got negative 6 minus 12, negative 18. We've got 6 minus 8 is a negative 2. We've got 0 minus 6 is a negative 6. That was here. And then we've got 0 minus 4 is a negative 4. Now we add these two together and we get 0 plus negative 18 is negative 18. Negative 22 plus negative 2 is negative 24. Negative 6 and negative 6 is negative 12. And yay, the final one, negative 2 plus a negative 4 is a negative 6. Yes. And that concludes our lesson on matrix multiplication.